And welcome back to Bible Journaling 66 and our walk through the book of Daniel. Today, we're going to look at chapter 2. We'll begin in chapter 2, verses 1 through 3. And in the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar dreamed dreams, wherewith his spirit was troubled, and his sleep brake from him. Then the king commanded to call the magicians and the astrologers and the sorcerers and the Chaldeans, for to show the king his dream. So they came and stood before the king. And the king said unto them, I have dreamed a dream, and my spirit was troubled to know the dream. In verse 4, the Chaldeans ask the king to tell them his dream so they can interpret it. In verse 5, we find the king tells the Chaldeans that he had forgotten the dream, but demands that they tell him what the dream is, and then the interpretation. I believe that the king did not trust them to give him a true interpretation. He goes on to tell them that if they do not interpret his dream, he will kill them and their families. The evidence from verse 9 tells us that the king did not trust them. And in verse 10, the Chaldeans then admit that no one on earth could show the king his dream. In verse 12 and 13, we find Nebuchadnezzar decreeing that all the wise men, soothsayers, astrologers should be put to death. Then in verses 14 and 15, Daniel asks for time so that he may pray and ask his God for the interpretation and the dream, and the king grants his request. Then in verses 17 through 19, Daniel and his friends spend a night in prayer, asking God to discern the secret of Nebuchadnezzar's dream. The prayer was answered, and Daniel gave God the blessing. Then in verses 25 through 28, Daniel goes before the king and tells him that his God was able to reveal the secret things that his astrologers and magicians and soothsayers could not. Then in verse 31, Daniel tells the king what he had dreamed. He then describes the image. The image's head was of fine gold, and his breast and his arms of silver, and his belly and thighs of brass, and his legs of iron, his feet part iron and part of clay. I want you to note that each of these successive materials become less valuable than the one before it. Then he saw a stone cut without hands that strikes the image upon the feet, and the entire image breaks into pieces. The stone that smote the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. And then in verse 36, he tells the king he will now interpret what it means. In verses 37 and 38, Daniel tells the king that he is the head of gold. Then Daniel goes on to explain that after him would come other world empires or kingdoms, each of lesser valued metal and each of lesser greatness than Babylon. History proves the prophecy, as the next world conqueror was the Medo-Persian Empire, followed by the Grecian Empire. Daniel then tells him of a fourth kingdom, signified by the legs of iron, that would destroy all that it conquers. The Roman Empire would be that kingdom. Then in verse 41, he talks about the feet and the toes, which turns out is part of the last kingdom, the Roman Empire, but it's different. And it says, "And whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, and the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it of the strength of the iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay." This kingdom is thought by most Bible scholars to be the continuation of the Roman Empire, which was later called the Holy Roman Empire. The iron then degrades as it descends to the feet and then the toes. The iron is mixed with clay that does not really bond together, and it tries to unite mankind, but ultimately will fail. Then Daniel goes on to tell King Nebuchadnezzar that finally God, the God of heaven, will set up a kingdom that will destroy all the other kingdoms and consume them all, and it will stand forever. While Nebuchadnezzar fell upon his face and worshiped Daniel and acknowledged that his God was a God of gods and a Lord of kings and a revealer of secrets, yet there is no evidence that his conscience had been reached by the revelation made to him of God's wisdom and power. Nebuchadnezzar rewards Daniel and his three friends by advancing them to positions of trust and power. This would be the perfect ending to Daniel's story, but it is only the beginning. You see, the wise men of Nebuchadnezzar's court were left alive, and they were not happy. So until next time, Maranatha, and God bless.